As Seán said, that the research is broken into both quantitative and qualitative questions. And altogether, there were 5 qualitative questions in the survey. And, well, there were 3, but one of the most important qualitative questions was question 4A. People could give 3 different responses. And so altogether, there are 2,470 responses to the main qualitative question, which was a lot of responses. And some of those responses were 1 or 2 words. Some of them were a line. Some people gave paragraphs and paragraphs of responses for the qualitative questions. So as part of the analysis, we needed to code those responses and break them down into themes. And originally, when we were breaking it down to themes, when you're doing qualitative research, when you're coding people's responses, it's very important that you remain true to the meaning of what people are saying. And it's very important that you're not imposing your interpretation on people's words and what they're trying to say, what's important to them. So originally we had 50 codes, then we reduced that down to 28 codes, and the top 15 codes, or the top 15 themes that are important to people, are included in Appendix 2. And as I said, there were 3 different questions, but the biggest one was question 4B, where there were over 2,000 responses. And then there were 2 extra questions where people, at the end of the survey, there was a question, is there anything you'd like to add? And there were 202 responses to that. So just to go through then the responses, the top 5 issues in qualitative responses, and they were quite different. When people were given the opportunity to write in their own words about what is important to them and what were their priorities, there were some differences in relation to the main quantitative question. People were given 10 issues and they had to rate those 10 issues, and there were closed questions. They had to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. But with the qualitative issues, the top 5 there are marriage equality. 25% of those over 2,000 responses, marriage equality was raised. Then the second one is full equality across the board. A large number of people just kept writing about equality in general and saying that equality in all aspects of their life, their cultural life, their political life, their social life, their daily life, their work life, that equality was a key issue for them and was non-negotiable. Then the third issue is parenting rights, and I'm going to go on and talk about marriage and parenting rights, so I'll just touch now on the other 2. The fourth one was health and mental health services, and over the last 10 years, there have been quite a number of very good studies and research done now on health and mental health services and the well-being of and the healthcare needs of lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people in the lesbian and gay community. And there's quite a body of evidence that's now emerging showing that health services are a particularly important issue for lesbian and gay people, and that lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people are asking for friendly and appropriate health services that suit their needs. Then the 5th issue that was coming up was that people were saying that it's very important that there's attitudinal change in wider society, that in wider society, amongst heterosexual people, amongst the wider community, that people need to change their attitudes and opinions with regard to lesbian and gay people and afford lesbian and gay people equal respect. And how that is done is the 5th issue there, that is 5A and 5B. The way that this can be done by our community is through greater public visibility and through combating stereotypes. And the Equality Authority last year in 2008 published a very important report, and there was a whole programme around combating stereotypes and how employers and employers in the public sector and right across society, that how stereotypes demean people and how stereotypes should be combated, and there should be greater public visibility. So then marriage equality, this was overwhelmingly raised as the first priority by people in their own words. And now, with the most important qualitative question, there was a weighting in that people were asked to rate their first, their second and their third most important issue. So we had to give a weighting to that. So if somebody said marriage equality was their first issue, we gave that a number 3. Their second issue, we gave a number 2. And then their third, we gave a number 1. So we afforded a weighting to it. So if you don't take the weighting into account, it was important for 20% of the responses. If you take the weighting into account, it's even more important. It's 25%. And then, in comparison with this, civil partnership rights were ranked 15 to priority of people in their own words. When we were working out a way of coding this and analysing it, whenever somebody mentioned civil marriage or only civil marriage was coded as civil marriage. Whenever somebody mentioned civil partnership, it was coded as civil partnership. And there was also about 3% of people who just mentioned recognition of LGBT relationships in general and didn't mention either of the words marriage or civil partnership, and that was coded as recognition in general. So civil partnership rights was ranked as 15th priority, but with the weighting it rose to 12th priority. And then there's just a few of the quotes of people about marriage equality. So equal rights in marriage across the board and not civil partnership. There was full equal rights for lesbian and gay people. Marriage rights should not be watered down to civil partnership rights. Don't renege on the need for absolute recognition of same-sex marriage. Being able to legally marry your partner with full entitlements as heterosexual couples have. And then, obviously, marriage equality, go noise. Then, as Seán said, parenting rights. In the actual quantitative questions, parenting rights weren't given as high a priority. But then when people had the chance to discuss what was really important to them in their own words, parenting rights rose up to 3rd priority. And right throughout the open-ended, the question of children and the question of recognising the rights of both lesbian and gay parents and the children in those family groupings kept appearing very heavily in the data. And again, there's a number of important quotes there. There's no legislation that does not include children. There's legal recognitions of LGBT families, not being recognised as human regarding marriage and adoption, and securing parenting rights as part of any measures around either civil union or marriage equality. And then the third one, again, right throughout the data, it became important, and even though 65% of responses were from Dublin, within the qualitative data, there was a very, very strong sense amongst people in the survey that people outside Dublin, historically, or people living in the regions, have been ignored by policymakers, they've been ignored by politicians, they've been ignored in some ways by lesbian and gay community organisations, and that there needs to be a greater effort and emphasis on helping people living outside the capital and providing services to those people and providing facilities for people and also developing capacity around the country. And again, there's a number of important quotes there. The establishing networks for gays and lesbians outside Dublin, access to face-to-face support in rural isolated areas, isolation. It's very hard for people not living in big cities to meet other LGBT people. And then the final one, lack of understanding about gay, lesbian issues in rural Ireland and the lack of support. Now, the NLGF welcomes that the creation of the Building Sustainable Communities LGBT working group, and there's also a separate transgendered working group that's going to be, that is being set up, and it's going to be a nationwide project. Glen are involved, Belong To are involved, and a lot of lesbian and gay, bisexual and transgender organisations across the country to specifically work on building capacity for LGBT people and trying to develop supports for people across the country and the regions. So then the conclusion, if you look at both the quantitative and the qualitative research together, the key conclusions that are emerging from the survey, the key everyday concerns of people would be equality at work, personal safety, LGBT-friendly services, supporting younger people, and supporting older people, and of course supporting people outside Dublin. They're the key everyday concerns. Then the key political concern, the two key political concerns that emerge very, very substantially through the research is marriage equality and legal recognition of LGBT families. And there's a final one that you could put there in that changing or repealing the equality legislation so that the exemptions for religious institutions that can discriminate against lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgendered people are removed. Okay, thank you. So I'll hand over to Ailbhe.